What just happened between India and the United States has left the world in shock. Did India really turn down $1 billion trade deal from America? And if so, what's India planning next? Could this be the moment that shifts global power away from Washington? Folks, this isn't just business. This is a game changer for the world economy, for politics, and for the future of global influence. What made India say a no to the most powerful nation on earth? And how will this bold move reshape alliances and power plays? Stay tuned, because this story is about to explode. The world just stopped for a second when news broke that India had said no to a massive trade offer from the United States. Now, that's not something you hear every day. I mean, when the world's biggest economy comes knocking with billions on the table, who turns that down? But here's the twist: India did. And that decision didn't just cause a stir, it caused a global shockwave. Markets trembled, diplomats scrambled, and world leaders started asking one question: what is India really up to? Because this wasn't just a deal. This was a defining moment in the global balance of power. You see, the U.S. came forward with what looked like a golden offer, a trade partnership that promised access, investment, and influence. On paper, it was everything a developing superpower could want. But India didn't bite. And that move sent one loud, clear message across the globe. India isn't playing by old rules anymore. This wasn't rejection. It was declaration. A declaration of independence, of power, and a vision for the future. Behind the scenes, experts say the deal came with strings attached, the kind that would have tied India closer to Washington's strategic agenda. Maybe it was about supply chains, maybe defense cooperation, maybe aligning on policies that favored U.S. interests more than India's. But whatever those terms were, India decided enough was enough. No more being the junior partner. No more signing deals that limit long-term freedom for short-term gain. And here's where things get really interesting. The U.S. didn't see it coming. Washington expected negotiations, maybe a few tough talks, but not a flat-out refusal. When India stood firm, it shook the confidence of those who thought America could always count on India's yes. This time, the world's fastest-growing major economy had drawn a line. The reaction? Mixed, to say the least. In Washington, there was quiet disbelief. In Beijing and Moscow, oh, you bet there were smiles. And in New Delhi, there was pride. India's decision wasn't made overnight. And it was the product of years of building confidence, strengthening domestic industries, expanding trade routes, and forging independent relationships with both East and West. This wasn't defiance, it was strategy. But here's the part that's got everyone talking. By saying no to the U.S., India might have opened the door to something far bigger. Global investors are watching. New alliances are forming. And smaller nations, long caught between the power plays of the US and China, are seeing a new example of what it means to stand tall. So what does this all mean for the world? Is India rewriting the rules of international power? Is this the start of a new era where global influence is no longer defined by the West? The answer might surprise you. Because this story isn't just about trade, it's about transformation. And if you think this was bold, wait until you see what India does next. Stay tuned, because the next move could change everything. Now here's the million-dollar question everyone's asking. Why did India really say no? What was so important that the world's fastest-growing economy turned down a trade deal that could have added billions to its pocket? Well, buckle up, because this isn't about money. It's about power, pride, and purpose. The truth behind India's refusal runs deep, and once you understand it, you'll see that this move wasn't just bold, it was brilliantly calculated. For decades, India has been the world's go-to partner for trade and technology. But there's always been one lingering tension: control. The U.S. deal looked shiny, but inside that offer were conditions that would have given Washington more say over India's markets, industries, and future policies. It wasn't just about goods and tariffs, it was about influence. And India, now standing tall as a global force, wasn't ready to trade sovereignty for convenience. Behind closed doors, Indian leaders reportedly analyzed every detail of that deal. They saw how it could limit domestic production, how it might tilt economic policies in America's favor, and how it could quietly slow India's push for self-reliance. The U.S. might have expected a quick handshake, but India brought a new game plan. one that puts national interest first, not foreign pressure. Let's be real. With a booming economy, a growing middle class, and a strong technological backbone, India no longer needs to bend for validation. It's building alliances on its own terms, from defense deals with France, to energy partnerships with Russia, to trade routes through the global south. Every move has one message. India decides its own path. But the real reason behind the refusal goes even deeper. It's about long-term strategy. By saying no, India isn't just rejecting a deal. It's redefining its global role, saying we don't need to follow. We're ready to lead. And make no mistake, that message has echoed through every major capital in the world. Because if India can stand up to Washington's biggest trade offer, it proves that global power isn't just measured by military strength or economic size, it's measured by independence. And here's the part that's got analysts buzzing. India's timing couldn't have been more perfect. The global economy is shifting. The US is facing challenges in Asia, Europe is struggling with energy and inflation, and China's influence is being questioned. Into that chaos steps India, stable, growing, and ready to play by its own rules. That's not defiance, that's leadership. So, was this a risk? Absolutely, but it's the kind of risk only a nation with confidence takes. And if history has taught us anything, it's that power often shifts when someone dares to say no. The US expected cooperation, but India delivered conviction. And that conviction is now shaping the next chapter of global politics. So, what happens next? Will this move push the US and India apart, or set the stage for a whole new kind of partnership? One thing's for sure, the world's watching, and the story isn't over yet. Keep watching, because the next revelation might just rewrite global power as we know it. When news broke that India had turned down America's trade offer, Washington didn't just raise an eyebrow. It went silent. The kind of silence that fills a room when something big just happened. The US had expected negotiation, maybe hesitation, but not a full-blown refusal from one of its most strategic partners. And that's when the question started echoing through corridors of power in DC. What does this mean for America's influence? Because make no mistake, this wasn't just about trade. This was about control, perception, and power. And India just flipped the script. Inside Washington, the reaction was mixed. Confusion, disbelief, and then quiet concern. Analysts rushed to understand how the US, which had invested years in building a close relationship with India, could end up on the receiving end of a rejection that loud. Officials tried to spin it as a temporary disagreement, but behind closed doors, everyone knew this was different. The US wasn't used to hearing a no, especially not from a country it considered a key ally in its strategy to balance China's rise in Asia. And yet, India's decision sent a powerful message. Partnership doesn't mean submission. The American reaction, at first, was cautious. Diplomatic cables flew back and forth. Senior officials requested urgent consultations. There was talk of revisiting the deal, softening terms, even offering new incentives, but India didn't budge. The message from New Delhi was calm, clear, and firm. India will engage, but only on equal terms. That's when the tension began to show. Washington's tone shifted from polite diplomacy to quiet frustration. Suddenly, policy think tanks were buzzing with debates. Is India moving away from the West? Has Washington underestimated New Delhi's ambitions? Could this refusal be the start of a broader realignment in global alliances? Those were questions no one wanted to answer, but everyone was asking. What's even more interesting is how public reaction in the US was split. Some called India's move a strategic misstep, claiming it could isolate India from Western support. Others, though, saw it differently. As a sign of growing multipolarity in the world, a new era where America isn't the only player calling the shots. The media called it a wake-up call for US foreign policy. The truth? It was more than that. It was a reminder that the global balance of power is shifting faster than anyone expected. But here's where things get really intriguing. Instead of retreating, the US started to rethink its strategy. If it couldn't pull India in through trade, maybe it could strengthen military cooperation or technological partnerships. There were whispers about defense deals, shared AI research, and new economic corridors. Washington realized that if it wanted to keep India close, it would have to treat it as a true partner, not a pawn. And that right there is the turning point. The refusal didn't just test the relationship, it transformed it. For the first time in decades, the US had to recognize India as a power that can't be pressured or persuaded through traditional tactics. The tables had turned. So now the world waits. Will America adjust its strategy to match India's new confidence, or will it cling to the old playbook of dominance and diplomacy? One thing is certain, this story isn't over. The next chapter between Washington and New Delhi could redefine not just trade, but the future of global leadership itself. Grace, stay tuned, because what happens next could change everything. When India said no to the US trade offer, the world didn't just hear a refusal. It heard a signal that echoed across continents from Asia to Europe to Africa. Something big was shifting, and almost immediately, other global players started to move. Because when a major power like India steps out of America's shadow, the rest of the world starts to take notice. The question now is, who will India stand with next? And could this decision spark the rise of new global alliances that could forever change how power is shared on the world stage? Behind the scenes, countries that once felt sidelined by Western dominance are quietly cheering. Nations in the global south, from Africa to Latin America, see India's move as a bold statement of independence. It's proof that you don't have to bow to Western pressure to thrive. And let's be real, that's a powerful message in a world where smaller economies have often been forced to play by someone else's rules. India's refusal of the US trade offer wasn't isolationist. It was strategic. It opened the door to new partnerships, ones based on equality, not dependency. And if you've been watching closely, you can already see the pieces moving on the global chessboard. Talks with Russia are deepening, not just about defense, but about energy, trade, and technology. With China, the relationship is complicated, yes, but also pragmatic. Both nations understand that economic cooperation, even in competition, can reshape Asia's future. And with Middle Eastern nations, India is expanding energy routes, infrastructure projects, and digital partnerships like never before. But here's where the story gets really interesting. As India strengthens ties across Asia and beyond, it's also building bridges with countries that have long sought an alternative to US-led systems. The BRICS alliance, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is gaining new momentum. And guess what? More countries are lining up to join. That's not a coincidence. It's a reflection of a global shift where nations are looking for balance, not dominance. Now, you might be wondering, what's driving India's confidence to lead this change? Simple: leverage. With one of the world's largest consumer markets, a booming digital economy, and growing geopolitical influence, India has become the partner everyone wants. But instead of choosing sides, India is choosing strategy. It's playing a long game, one where it can talk to Washington, trade with Moscow, cooperate with Beijing, and still lead in the global south. And that's what's making world powers nervous. Because a strong, independent India doesn't fit neatly into anyone's plan. It's not a pawn, it's becoming a power broker. And that's why this story isn't about trade anymore. It's about transformation. The alliances being built right now could redraw economic maps, reshape global security, and redefine what a superpower means in the 21st century. So the big question is this the start of a new world order, led by emerging nations who refuse to play by old rules? Or is it just the calm before a global storm where new power centers rise and old ones fight to hold on? One thing's for sure, the world will never look at India the same way again. Keep watching, because the alliances forming now are about to change everything we thought we knew about global power. The world is standing at a crossroads, and India just might be holding the map. After refusing the US trade offer, one question now echoes through every global boardroom and political chamber. Is this the moment India shifts the balance of power forever? For years, the global system has revolved around a few dominant players, but now that system is cracking, and the shockwaves from India's decision are revealing a new reality. The future of global leadership might not belong to the West anymore. It might belong to the nations bold enough to challenge it. Think about it. Every great power shift in history started with one bold move. One act of defiance that changed the rules of the game. And this time, that act came from New Delhi. By refusing to play by Washington's terms, India didn't just protect its economy, it announced its arrival as a global force ready to stand on its own. And here's the part that's making world powers nervous. India isn't seeking permission, it's setting direction. For decades, international influence flowed from west to east. The US and Europe called the shots, while others followed. But look around now. The economic momentum, the population growth, the innovation, they're all shifting east. India is leading that charge, not by chance, but by design. With its massive market, booming digital economy, and rapidly growing defense and space industries, India is building a foundation strong enough to anchor a new global era. But it's not just about economics. It's about ideology, the belief that the future of power doesn't have to be built on dominance, but on balance. India's strategy isn't to replace one superpower with another. It's to create a world where influence is shared, where nations act as equals, not subordinates. That's why India's been strengthening ties not just with major players like Russia and France, but also with emerging economies in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. This isn't isolation, it's innovation and diplomacy. Now here's the part that makes this moment historic. When the US offered that deal, it represented the old model, influence through economic leverage. India's rejection represents the new model, leadership through independence. And that's exactly why this decision could redefine the next decade. Because if India succeeds in charting its own path without leaning on Western approval, it sets a precedent every developing nation can follow. And let's not forget, India has the momentum. With one of the youngest workforces in the world, massive infrastructure projects, and growing technological dominance, it's not waiting for validation. It's building the future right now. Global corporations are shifting investments eastward, international coalitions are being redefined, and for the first time in modern history, India is being seen not just as a partner, but as a power. So what happens next? Will this new confidence inspire a full-scale global realignment? Will India's rise lead to collaboration or confrontation with the West? The answers are unfolding right before our eyes. One thing is crystal clear. The balance of power is shifting, and India just tipped the scale. The age of Western dominance may be fading, and the dawn of a new multipolar world is rising, with India standing right at the center of it. Stay tuned because this story is only just beginning. The world is witnessing history in motion, and India is right at the heart of it. By refusing the US trade offer, India didn't just walk away from a deal. It walked toward a destiny. A destiny built on self-reliance, strategic vision, and global influence. This moment isn't just about trade. It's about transformation. It's about a nation stepping out from the shadows of global powers and standing tall on its own terms. India has made it clear. The future will no longer be written by one or two superpowers. The new world order will be shaped by many voices, many nations, and new kinds of leadership. From economic strength to diplomatic balance, India is showing that true power comes not from control, but from confidence. So as the world watches this unfolding shift, one thing is certain, nothing will ever be the same again. The balance of power is changing, alliances are being rewritten, and the rise of India marks the beginning of a brand new era in global history. Stay tuned, because the story of India's ascent is only getting started, and its next chapter could redefine the world itself. And there you have it, a moment that will be remembered as a turning point in global history. India's bold no to the US wasn't just a refusal. It was a statement to the world. The future will not be dictated, it will be decided by those who dare to stand tall. This isn't the end of a story. It's the beginning of a new chapter, one where India steps onto the global stage as a true power player. The question now is simple. How will the world respond? Because one thing is clear. India has made its move, and nothing will ever be the same again. Stay tuned, because the world's eyes are on India, and the next move could change everything. If you enjoyed this story and want to stay ahead of the next big global twist, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Don't forget to like, share, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a single update on the world's biggest power shifts, political moves, and breaking economic stories. This is just the beginning. And trust me, you'll want to be here when the next chapter unfolds. So go ahead, subscribe now, join the conversation, and be part of the community that watches history happen in real time.